Hi, this is our second video dealing with the FLITZ polishing system. This video is basically going to be devoted to polish and paint. Our first video was using FLITZ to polish aluminum. So before I go any further, let me just explain the difference of some of the things you might be of interest and some of the things I can share the information I've learned. Here we have 35, 37-year-old paint. We have basically maybe 7-year-old paint, 9-year-old paint, 5-year-old paint, and maybe 4-year-old paint. So we're going to get a nice broad spectrum of different. The paints cure at a different rate, and they buff and polish at a different rate. Now, on the first FLITZ video where we polished a lot of different metals, including silver, and of course I don't want to redo this. I don't want to spend another 5 or 10 minutes being redundant. Check that video out for more information on polishing metal. But to make this a fair test, this ball has never had anything on it except FLITZ polish. This is basically what we're going to use for the test. So my first test, and again, I do like to test products in the real world and in real time. So if the video seems like it's getting lengthy, well, maybe it is. But keep in mind, the objective of everything that we do is to do it realistically, not on pie in the sky, not with camera cuts. So step one, and I'm going to mask this off. I want to show exactly how I would do this. And step one, just the same as on the metal testing, well, not metal testing, but the metal polishing video. It says to use a damp cloth and a little bit of FLITZ polish. And I'm using a damp cloth here. And I can say honestly, I was very impressed with the way this polish worked on metal, both by hand and by machine. Now, I'm going to leave it to your imagination. See, rather than being somebody that's working for FLITZ and wearing a FLITZ t-shirt or whatever, you know, this is one of the things I like to do. That's doing it by hand. I want to take in this case, a dry microfiber, just polish it up. And I want to look at and try to show and see if you can see the difference. I can in real life, but that's only one part of the test. Now that part of the test, if I take this off, maybe you can see it better that way, I don't know. Again, it feels a lot smoother. It is a lot smoother, but now we're going to back mask that off. And I'm going to make the second part of this test. I want to use the FLITZ ball. Now part two of this test, again. What's nice about using this buffing ball, it doesn't burn the surfaces around it. It's made in such a way that it stays cool. And it's the heat that burns when you paint especially. So I want to be careful. Very, very light pressure. Very light, not. And I can see right away that's a lot shinier than the part we did by hand, which is a lot shinier than the part we didn't do at all. But again, I'm not sure because we don't have expensive cameras and all kind of Photoshop equipment. We're just trying to do a very simple test. So by looking at it, and usually when I do this kind of thing, I can see it in real life. I'm not sure you can see in the with the camera cuts, but here we are, the standard paint that's 5 or 6 years old, I'm not sure. Part buffed by hand, but the part done with the buffing ball, way nicer. So that's just a basic way I would want to test something before I do a polishing job. Now, keep in mind this really is urethane car paint, two-part car paint to clear anyway. And you really can feel it leaves a coating of beeswax. I think that's really one of the things that's real important. So what I'm going to do now, because this is one of my helmets that I had from the good old days. You can't even buy these helmets now. They don't even have any vents or anything. And so this is one of the ones. I'm gonna off camera just polish it up, and then I want to try to polish the face shield. That's like a 30-year-old face shield too. Now, because you can't even buy these face shields anymore. This is an old Bell product. I thought, what the heck? Let's try it. See if it take out some of the deep scratches anyway. This is an old helmet. I think this helmet used to belong to Frank Straub, but I really don't remember. So I've got a whole bunch of helmets here in the house. But I did want to just see, and this is basically for my own information. Now, the thing that makes this tool nice, it's really easy to handle. It's really nice. Now, I can see right away on one thing, you could probably do headlight lenses number 2. We're trying to concentrate on paint, but that is really, and with the cost, some of these face shields are almost $100. Being able to salvage a shield that has scratches and dings in it, that's worth something. So now again, what I'll do is the rest of this I'll polish off camera, then I'll go on to the next step of this video. So the total project here was about 5 minutes of buffing. That's pretty nice. I really have to admit, that's pretty nice. But what really impressed me a lot was how it cleaned up that face shield. And that face shield, this is not something that's brand new. This is old plexiglass. And an old helmet. I bet this helmet is from the 70s. It's a Bell Star. And again, I don't remember, but I do think it used to belong to Frank Straub. And it was part of the Green Bike project. Boy, that's buffed up beautifully, but I want to move on to the next test. Now, before I put this part back on the shelf, I wanted to see it in sunlight as well as in the lights that are in the shop. Boy, that's very impressive stuff. Now, of course, when you're painting a surface that's well maintained and in nice condition, that's one thing. I wanted to see how this is going to work on a part that's not maintained at all. These are the hubcaps from my minivan, and I painted these, I think, 8 or 9 years ago. I had run into a curb. You can see I'm not the greatest driver here. And then I just had black in the gun, and I just said, well, instead of having a scuffed up hubcap. But to make the test fair, first thing I want to do, I want to clean off all the grit. We'll start with a clean hubcap, and I had this, I was thinking this might be a really valid way to test this. Let me just clean this up. I may as well do this off camera, but I wanted to start with a clean surface, and you can see the paint's in decent shape, but it's certainly not show quality. Well, we're going to see about that. And this is the likely scenario for a lot of people because they have a vehicle or parts of a vehicle that are not, I call it not well maintained, and what I'm going to do is just pretty much what the directions say to do. I'll do one spoke in various different methods. This method, I'm just going to take an ordinary microfiber, pretend you didn't have the buffing ball in your inventory, and you just wanted to polish something up by hand. Now, needless to say, this is going to take a whole lot longer than method 2, having a buffing ball. But eventually, you're going to get it. But it's just going to take a long time, and that's where the buffing ball comes in. Now remember, this has really got stone chips in it, and I mean, this is not a show quality This is a soccer mom car, soccer grandpa car. Anyway, I'm going to wipe that clean. And I usually do a lot of this by feel. Wow, it does feel a whole lot better. But this is only the first step. The next step is I want to do the next spoke, and I'll move over to this one. What I want to do is I want to do this one with the buffing ball, but no sanding, then one with the 2000 grit sanding, so that I can compare the spokes. So what's going to happen, each step it's going to be progressively smoother than the time before, and of course more effort, more work, and a better outcome. So what I want to do, now this side I'm just going to use just a buffing ball. No sanding yet. And this would show the progressive steps you can use in doing any custom finishing or polishing, and why some work a lot better than others. Again, a nice part of this is the ball stays cool. It doesn't burn the paint. So I would say it's safe to say that anybody buffing out a part, it's just real quick, and that's a quick and dirty buffing job. What I'm going to do, I'm going to mark this only for my own reference here, so I can go back and show this later. But now I want to go to the step, and this is the step where it starts to get complicated, because remember, this is really paint that's in rough shape. So let's start with, and none of these are really much better than the other one. I want to start with this one, and what I want to do is I want to get some 2000 grit sandpaper and sand this smooth. Now to go to the next level, this is 2500 grit sandpaper. We have a little bit of soapy water. It's not a whole lot different than how we did the aluminum. Let me just get this in a place where I can scuff it up. This takes a little bit of elbow grease, and keep in mind you can do this to any paint that's fully cured. Now, when I say fully cured, modern paint cures in a day or two, sometimes 2 or 3 days, depending on the temperature. But what happens is, once you go through this step, the finish is a whole lot nicer. And you get rid of a lot of the moon craters. In this case, if we have some really deep moon craters, then what I'll show how to get rid of them on the next step. We'll do a double step on this. Again, my objective here is to do this with as few or no camera cuts, because that's really truth in advertising. And that's the part you always, I don't know, sometimes I get skeptical when I see things where there's a lot of Photoshop and camera cuts, and I used to weigh 100 pounds and look at, I lost 100 pounds on Wendy's diet system. I don't know about that. Anyway, this is my point. Let that dry. This is what it's going to look like. Some 2500 grit paper. And now, I want to see again. Remember, no camera cuts. None of that fancy stuff. Let's just see how this works out. And remember, this is very unmaintained. I'm not big on washing cars or anything. This is a car I basically use to go get groceries. It's not my street rod or anything. Now, one of the things I want to caution everybody about, you don't need a lot of this polish. You really, what's on here, if you put more polish on, you're just wasting a polish. Again, I wanted to show this in real time, so maybe a little boring, but you'll know I didn't spend an hour on this. Now that's, and again, I'm not sure you can really see. This is one of the things, but you sure can feel it. And you can see what we started with. And if you see that, when you see that in real life, this really has a nice, I don't know what the right word is, a nice feel, a nice glow, and relatively easy to do. This is not like major high-tech stuff. Now again, we're limited because yeah, this really is some really unmaintained paint. There's a lot of scratches and divots in it and everything. And what I wanted to do, I wanted to come up to this level and just show how quick, the speed at which that turned that into just beautiful, beautiful paint. Now, usually about once a year, usually in the springtime, I try to detail out the van. I try to put a coat of wax on it with the buffing wheel. And when I do, I'm going to use this product to basically clean the whole car. And I'll make a separate video of that, of course. But so far, there's the three things. You can buff it by hand, use the pad, or you really go to the top level. Now, again, I mentioned on the metal video, there's even a level above this. I buff with a fur wheel. Well, that's like for show cars and show bikes and stuff, but for our purposes, this would just be great. And that I showed in real time how I did it, and I think the reality is I think anybody can do that. So what I always do, I always like to take my project out and see in the sun. And this is the spoke that we did. And to be honest, I'm waiting for a nice warm day that I can go out and buff the whole car out. That'll be an interesting video. So basically, this is one of the other hubcaps. There's what we started with. I thought this would be an interesting test. This is actually from a spray can. This is not even from a spray gun. This is part of one of our track bikes that we haven't used in a year or two. Been sitting out there. You can see how much dust it has. So the first thing I'm going to do the thing off camera, clean it with Simple Green, mask off a spot, and see if this buffs up. Now, this is really, I believe it's Rust-Oleum. It does not look like, it has the look of Rust-Oleum anyway. It's got an orange peely surface. I'm going to see if we can make that shine. Now, of course, the idea of all our tests is to see what's possible, what's practical, what's doable, what's easy to do, and we can zero this down. This is some, again, I've looked at enough paint in my lifetime, having 52 years of painting experience. I can kind of tell that this is Rust-Oleum, and it's orange peely. It isn't modern urethane, but let's just see. Now, Rust-Oleum, if you handle a buffing of it right, here's the trick with any Rust-Oleum products. You gotta let it dry. If you paint something with Rust-Oleum, let it dry. The longer the better, even 2 weeks, a week. Put it out in the sun. Once it outgasses, you can put urethane clear on top of it without any problem. But if you rush it, you just bought a baby alligator. It'll all turn to alligator skin. Now, a lot of people get impatient with 2,500, 2,000 grit, even 3,000 grit paper. They want to move right along. They want it to be like, this is what they want, and they're done. But it does take some time to get the part flat. Once you get it flat, even if it's Rust-Oleum, we'll take a little look if we're getting it flat. We got a couple of high spots in there still, but good enough for what we're doing. We're just doing a test anyway. There we go. Now, once it dries up, you'll get to see that is flat. There's a couple little spots in there, and I could sand this forever if we want to use the part. I just want to take the buffing pad now and see how long it's going to take to bring that Rust-Oleum up. Now again, a lot of people that are looking to not spend a lot of money on paint, Rust-Oleum is a good second choice. Now, a couple of things they tell you not to let the polish dry, so we're going to be very careful not to do that. Now I can see already, I haven't even started the buffing, but that's definitely going to come up. What I have to do is I have to hold my elbow here. Now here's the big trick that makes this special. This isn't hot. When you do this with other types of pads, even wool pads and microfiber pads, this gets red hot. This is made to cool, it's self-cooling. All those little air vents in there keep it cool. And I definitely want to see this. I definitely want to see this in real time. I don't want one of these camera cut things. Let me get a rag here. Clean this off. Now that's just a simple test of Rust-Oleum. That's probably is 10-year-old Rust-Oleum. But keep in mind, anytime you use that kind of paint, it's softer than automotive paint. It's going to be a little more delicate. And because this is a 6000 grit, it's relatively delicate to the softer paints like Rust-Oleum. Now what I'm curious about, this is just a little test for me. I've got several really annoying scratches in here. This paint is actually in pretty nice shape. This is not like the Rust-Oleum, this is urethane, modern urethane. So I'm wondering if this is going to take I don't know until I try it, of course. I wonder if this is going to take some of the scratches out of this part. As long as I'm experimenting today, there's no point in not trying it. Believe it or not, it looks like it took that one out. This was the worst one right here. A little more. There were a couple little ones over there. Again, because what's good about this, it doesn't take a lot of paint off. If I were using a gritty compound or ordinary automotive compound, pretty soon you go through the paint. That one's gone. That one isn't gone. Well, I want to see. I've got a good percentage of it out, but I know there's still more. And since this is a part that I handmade, I kind of want to, and I put it on the RD from time to time when I want to be. I want to pretend I'm Kenny Roberts. Doesn't really work out for Kenny either. So I would say it's not really. Yeah, it did get most of it out. Wow, that's amazing. Well, it gets light scratches out. I don't think if you have deep scratches, you want to use the 2500 sandpaper. Now, as I said before, I had worked on this, and I did it in real time, of course, and it did not take out these scratches. Let me see if I can focus in on these scratches that I was annoyed. You can see there, let's see. I can't see them, they're right here. Try to look for those little scratches. Now there they are right there. Now what those little scratches are, and it's sad, this is from me picking my leg up over the motorcycle, and the camera mounts here, so I would try to go up over the camera and I'd always catch that with my boot. So those deep scratches, now the scratches on this side came right out instantly. These are kind of deep, so what I'm going to do is, I want to show how I would do it anyway. I'm going to take some 2500 sandpaper, sand this smooth, and then go back over it with the FLITZ. Now again, this is urethane, so, and those are really deep scratches. I never took a really notice of how deep they were, but usually 2500 paper will take them out. It'll be very interesting to see how quick the FLITZ brings the shine back. Again, I really baby this part. I've treasured it because it took me a long time to make it. I believe the video is still out on my channel that when we made this. That was pretty crude video back then, back in the day, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But anyway, let me just see if this is going to be what I want. Now, what it is, we're down through the scratches. I hope. Let's find out. Only one way to find out. Unfortunately, with all of this stuff, there's only one way to find out. Where's the polish? Steven Spielberg would never put up with this. Now the black that you see is actually the aluminum that's on here from the video I made about polishing aluminum. By the way, there are a ton of videos about polishing things out on Windy Space U. And just today we went over 3,000 subscribers. Wow! Now the reason this is good technology, the reason this is wonderful technology is because everybody I know has scratches in a motorcycle. And we basically have most of it out. We got one little spot here. One little spot. And I think we'll be... That's really too much polish, by the way. I've been putting too much polish. When you see the polish spraying off, you're using too much polish. You're just wasting it then. Now another thing, I'm not pressing down like you do on a buffing wheel. When you're buffing on a big heavy motor, I'm letting the buffing compound do the work. I'd say by looking at that, we've got it. So my conclusion is, good for light scratches, heavy scratches, 2500 sandpaper. And every time I do a test day like today, I learn something that to me is of value in the future. And the bikes are constantly getting scratched. They constantly need little touch-ups. That's just the part of owning antique motorcycles. And the FLITZ products are going to help me keep them as nice as I can. Now this is a railing I recently restored using automotive urethane. It's a railing that goes up 3 stories into the house. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to try the FLITZ on it, which I did, of course. And it's very, very easy to use. And boy, does it leave a nice shine. But again, that's automotive paint. I'm not sure how that would work on furniture or whatever. So my session is ending on a real positive note. I can say now that I've used the FLITZ system for 2 days, both on aluminum, metal, steel, other materials, whatever. Even I think sterling silver we used it on. Anyway, what I did come to the conclusion is a very, very high quality product. Here's the other amazing thing. Now, if you've seen the first video, you know how much buffing I did. This is how much I used of the product. You might want to have some 2500 grit sandpaper for doing deep scratches. I learned this is not a real good choice for taking out deep scratches. This is better, and then finish it off with FLITZ. And that's what happens as you use any new product. You'll learn as you go. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed that first video that I made, polishing the metal parts with FLITZ. It's now a permanent part of our shop. Again, thanks for watching.